Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses as we continue with Part 11, the Garduna, Holy Warriors of Spain, from A History of Secret Societies by Arkon Daraul. Chapter 10, the Garduna, Holy Warriors of Spain. When Franco led his Moors into Spain to challenge the Republicans, certain units of the left-wing forces adopted as their battle cry the slogan, "Remember the Holy Madonna of Cordova," and a secret society, which may have started when the Arab general Tarik crossed into Iberia, told the world that it was active again. After World War II, an important anti-Semitic German arrived in Madrid by a devious route and sought out the house of a nobleman. He gave the password "Muerto a los marranos," death to the hogs, and it was not long before he found himself in the safety of Latin America, passed from one branch of the Garduna secret society to another. 1,200 years of connected history is the boast of the criminal organization which claims that it was responsible for crushing the last of Arab power in Europe, and that it was the favored tool of the Holy Inquisition against Jews, Muslims, and every kind of Marrano heretic which infested the most Catholic land of Spain. But it seems that the real origins of the Garduna as a unified force do not go back much further than the blood-spattered days of Ferdinand the Catholic and Isabella the Holy, who in the 15th century started their crusade against Moorish influence in Spain. The Moors, who civilized Spain, and the Jews, who came with them and taught in their universities, had little effective military power left by the end of the 15th century. Most civilians had been killed or exiled to North Africa. Pockets of guerrillas remained in the mountains. Some had elected to become Christians in order to remain in the country. They were mainly of Spanish blood and had nowhere else to go. While the Holy Inquisition had few scruples about its methods, there was still a large number of cases of Jews and Moors who professed the Catholic faith but who were suspected of secretly practicing their old religion. Some were rich, others apparently respectable members of the church. In too many cases, they could not be proceeded against openly. This was where the Garduna came in. Dedicated to the literal destruction of every trace of non-Catholic ways, to the murder wherever possible of anyone who might harbor dangerous thoughts, the society became the unofficial weapon of the Holy Inquisition. In order to train its members in right thinking, the Garduna evolved a myth. The society, runs this pseudo-history, came into existence shortly after the first battle against the Arabs took place. The Holy Virgin of Cordova took refuge with the heroic Christians. God the Father was displeased with the Christians and thus allowed the Moors to conquer most of the country to punish them. The only people permitted to survive were the elect, chosen to reconquer the country and wipe it clean of infidelity. In order to do this, they had to struggle for 700 years. It was the tears of the Cordovan Virgin which had mitigated the punishment from total destruction and allowed that the Spanish people, if they followed the Garduna in its divine mission, should eventually prevail. This terrible yet in parts heartening news was not at first revealed to the struggling patriots. Motivated entirely by pure and unselfish impulses, groups of true Spaniards took to the highlands and formed themselves into bands, unaware at the time of the details of their holy destiny. But in the wild country of the Sierra Morena there dwelt a sanctified hermit called Apolinario, whose main activity was the worship of the Virgin. Him she chose as her messenger to pass on the true facts of the situation. She appeared before her devotee and revealed the victory of the Moors as due to divine punishment. She was, she said, one day looking at the world and the unhappy state of the Spaniards, when she had the sudden idea to mention to Christ that the Spanish, after all, had many fine qualities. At this her son became more cheerful, and she took the opportunity of asking him to allow the hermit to save Spain. He agreed. The position now was that the anchorite was to collect all patriots and lead them against the enemy in the name of the Cordovan Virgin. As their reward on this earth, the said warriors were to be entitled to all lands and other possessions of the Moors, no matter how they came into ownership of them. The wealth of the Moors was dangerous to the Spaniards, but in Spanish hands it would prove a blessing for the true religion. The Virgin now anointed the hermit and presented him with a button, which she had herself removed from the robe of her son. This relic had miraculous powers. Anyone wearing one like it would be saved from death, from the Moors, from heretics of all kinds. This mandate was more than enough for the hermit, and he immediately founded the Holy Garduna, accredited to kill by the highest possible source, and directly authorized at that. This fact gave rise to the custom of religious dedication before an attack upon anyone, and the Bible was consulted for omens before taking decisions. By opening it at random and finding a meaning in the passage thus revealed, Ferdinand and his inquisitors alike found in the society an ally which seemed to have been created for the situation in which they found themselves. Even before Ferdinand's time, the bands had been in most active existence. They looted and burnt, combining the roasting of heretics with the burning of their houses and also the claiming of their movable property and land. How many Garduna there were is not known, but they certainly played a large part in the crusade against the Moors, and their pious exhilaration on the field of battle has passed into legend. When, however, the actual fighting was over, the Garduna became something of an embarrassment to the king. For one thing, they were becoming jealous of their booty and would not share it. Secondly, quite a number of genuine Christian royalists found that they were being smelt out as heretics and subjected to their tender attentions. And when the Garduna decided to descend upon a person, they completed the operation with remarkable thoroughness. Soldiers were sent out against their bands, and it seems to be at this time that the federation came about, which welded the brigands into one powerful body. Although the king was against them now, they still retained their association with the Inquisition, which tended to protect them at court. Seville became the headquarters of the movement, and the society was given a secret constitution and shape. There were 9 degrees of membership. New entrants were called goats, chivatos, and were little more than the servants of the fully fledged members. From their ranks were drawn spies, scouts, and porters. They were trained to imitate animal cries, which were the signals of the marauding bands. The covers, coberteras, were women of uncertain morals who had a multitude of uses. They would waylay people on the roads and engage them in conversation while the band readied itself for an attack. They wormed their way into houses on various pretexts to spy out the land. They lured men into ambushes. For special projects which required a more refined type of character, the Garduna employed sirens, serenas, who were young women posing as ladies of breeding. These were frequently the mistresses of Garduna chiefs and wanted for no material comfort. The bellows, fuels, were ancient men of respectable and venerable appearance who traded in the loot, made friends with prospective victims, and negotiated with the Inquisition when the latter had special projects to be carried out. The athletes, floreadors, were the strong-arm men, capable of every vice and villainy. They had often been convicts and bullies or galley slaves, and they formed the backbone of the attack forces. The swordsmen, ponteadoras, were more refined and could play many social parts. It was from the swordsman class that most of the chiefs, guapos, were recruited. The supreme ritualistic heads were known as magistri and carried out priestly and administrative functions. The commanders, capataz, were regional leaders who carried out the orders of the chief of chiefs, the great brother or grand master, known as the hermano mayor. His word was law, and his discipline frightening. The Garduna should not be considered as fighters alone. They had a regular tariff which included kidnapping and deportation, providing false witnesses, selling enemies as slaves, and the falsification of documents. The more refined activities were made possible through their cooperation with the priesthood. Their word was their bond where any matter of villainy was concerned. If the Garduna said that a man would be murdered at a specific place and time, he was murdered exactly as promised. Documents showed that half of any agreed fee was payable in advance, the balance on completion. Even the manner in which this money was used was controlled according to fixed rules. 1/3 of all money earned through commissions went straight to the general funds of the Holy Garduna. A similar amount for running expenses. The remainder was shared among those who actually did the deed. The general fund was not wasted, and the Garduna were fully aware of the needs of public relations officers and friends in high places. That for a considerable period the affairs of the society were in a very flourishing state is proved by the fact that they were able to keep in their pay at the court of Madrid persons holding high positions to protect and further the interests of the members. They even had their secret affiliates among judges, magistrates, governors of prisons and similar officials whose chief duty lay in facilitating or effecting the escape of any member of the society that might have fallen into the hands of justice. It was not until 1822 that a really determined attempt was made to suppress the society in the closely knit modern form in which it now existed. When this descent upon the Garduna took place, much of abiding interest was discovered. The organization, although it was careful to have no papers dealing with its constitution and laws, was vain enough to keep a comprehensive record of its dealings. This was in the form of a book, seized in 1821 at the house of the Grand Master, Francisco Cortina. And it was on the basis of this document that the order was brought before the courts. The manuscript showed that there were branches in Toledo, Barcelona, Cordova, and other cities, towns, and villages. Proved from these pages was a close and intimate connection with the Inquisition until the 17th century. Statistically speaking, this association is of interest. The Spanish authorities showed that in the 147 years of cooperation with the Holy Fathers between 1520 and 1667, almost 2,000 enterprises of dubious kinds were entrusted by the Inquisition to the Garduna. The profits on this series of transactions were recorded as almost 200,000 gold francs. Detailed analyses showed that Garduna activities on behalf of the Holy Office were equally divided as follows: murder, 1/3, abduction of women, 1/3, robbery, perjury, and the rest, 1/3. On the 25th of November in 1822, the last official Grand Master and 16 of his chief officers were publicly hanged in the market of Seville. As we have seen, this was by no means the end of the Holy Garduna. The South American branches were flourishing in 1846, and there are further references to them in 1949. At the present day, there are said to be 2 branches, mutually hostile, operating in Spain. The one supports the church and is said to be in active contact with it. The other, a left-wing organization, is reputed to have set up its own secret church and to be dedicated to setting up a holy socialist state. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.